Jesus didn't have a problem with people that's in the streets. He had a problem with religious people.
How can I help anybody when when I was not even able to help my own son?
I would never do that. And I became that in a matter of minutes when they took my pain pills away.
And I said, I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not what I used to be.
This is Faith in Your Recovery. I am Randy Davis. Welcome to the battle. We always look forward to having you with us. Thanks for joining us again today here on Faith in Your Recovery. We're here to talk all things recovery. Our guest is going to come from a little bit different angle. It's not so much he hasn't had a history of drugs, but he certainly had a history of working with those who have struggled with it. You'll get to know more about that in a few moments here. Our guest is Greg Maynard. Welcome, Greg.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's good to see you again.
You
Greg
too.
and I connected. Do you remember when that was?
Stand in the Gap.
Stand in the Gap on the mall. I always want to call it the plaza. The Washington, D.C. Mall took place October 4th, 1997. I hold in my hand here a Bible that was given to us there. Greg, I don't know if you remember it or not.
I was going to say this, all the signatures.
Yeah,
yep, mine's on my bookcase.
Yeah.
I've still got mine too.
Yeah, I love digging this up. I spent a little time today going back, and one of the news stations at that time has the full day from there in D.C. And man, wasn't that a beautiful day too?
We had a heck of a trip.
Oh,
not even just getting there, getting to D.C. and coming back.
Oh,
yeah, we had a good time in the car.
The whole package.
Yeah,
we were.
Well, were there 10 of us in a hotel room in sleeping bags, and 8 or 10?
And every corner, all right.
Yeah.
And that's
Fire marshal would not have been happy that night.
And neither would anybody have been comfortable sleeping in the car as we were going. So we made sure we were all awake. But we haven't connected much since then.
Friends into each other occasionally with job stuff, but we've always been good friends. One of those friendships that as soon as we see each other, it's like we never were apart.
Reconnect without any issue. Well, thank you for taking time out of your schedule today to come and join us. Let's go ahead. Tell the folks what your career's about right now. I want them to get to know that, and then we'll dig some questions out of you.
Currently, my title is Director of Special Projects. I work at Radiant Health, and we are the Community Mental Health Center, which does mental health work and substance abuse work, predominantly in Blackford and Jay counties, a little bit in Wabash, and then we cover some other counties in the state with some virtual programming. But we do a lot of work with substance abuse. We are in a partnership through Purdue University, so we are doing work with Jay County Drug Coalition. They have a grant through a federal agency where we are trying to reduce stigma and work on opioid abuse in Blackford and Jay counties. So Radiant is a big part of that too.
That stigma and bias thing is big.
Oh, yeah.
And as I mentioned you and introduced you somewhat to the folks a few moments ago, do you experience any personal bias, stigma, by not having come from a drug background, an addiction background?
A little bit. Once people hear who I have worked with, because over 40 years of my career, I've spent an awful lot of time. My background mainly is being around the criminal justice system. So I spent a lot of time with offenders.
Some law enforcement time.
So my original background, I'm an old newspaper reporter.
That's where you were, I think, when we connected or just got out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I spent 20 years in newspapers, left that, got into a corporate background, and then got back into community work running a federal grant in Muncie for 3 years. It was called a weed and seed grant. It was out of the U.S. Department of Justice. Once you hear it, I was not in landscaping. I heard all the jokes. But when you look at what we were doing, half of it, the weed part, was trying to clean up the core of Muncie, and then the seed part was bringing in social services. So we were working a lot with treatment providers, AANA. It was before Brianna's Hope really took off.
Sure.
But, groups like that were doing recovery work. And a big piece of that then was trying to get, when offenders were coming out of prison or jail, help them work on job skills and get them employed. A big piece, and it's common sense, but a lot of people don't realize it, 87%, I forget what the exact numbers are since I've been out of that side of the business for so long now, but 90% of offenders are coming out. They're going to come home. So when we look at that, if we can support them when they get home and they have housing, they have a job, they have their ID, as simple as that sounds to most of us, but trying to get an ID when you get out, if you've done 20 years in jail, in prison, is a complicated process. But if they have all of that, then their chances of committing another crime and going back to prison decrease exponentially. So we were focused on the employment piece and the pieces around that, getting them IDs. And so we're having some success. Congress cut the funding. So then I went into that. It was kind of a God thing, I believe. But at that time when we were shutting our grant down, the state was starting an offender reentry program focused on employment out of the State Department of Workforce Development. So they brought me on to be the regional person. I had Jay in Blackford County all the way down to Fayette, Cass County, down in through there. So I had 9 counties in the Work One region, and was working in prisons and jails doing job interview workshops, resume workshops, talking to employers, trying to connect employers to folks who might be good employment candidates. And that program, that's been 11, 12 years ago we started that, and that program's taken off tremendously.
I want to go back to the weed and seed for just a moment,
sure.
Okay? As you're talking about that, I'm reflecting back on that day and age. It was a little different then as far as our addiction struggles and what goes. Obviously, marijuana has been here almost since day one.
Oh, yeah.
And we've abused it since day one, probably. But that was the primary, correct me if I'm wrong,
No,
but
it's
I
still
see that as that primary drug of that day. We didn't have the access to the heroin, the cocaine, or the interference and the deadliness of fentanyl back then.
Yeah.
It began in many people's mind as a harmless drug. We know better. There are so many different effects. We don't have to spend our time debating that.
Yeah.
But we've come to learn that. What is the biggest change you have seen in drug availability, drug abuse?
It's been interesting over, like I say, my 40 years or so around this world, how what's old is new again, to borrow an old phrase. I mean, when I was a newspaper reporter, powder cocaine and crack was huge. Now it's almost unheard of, but it came back for a while. Heroin was huge. It left because meth came. Meth kind of went down, heroin came back, and now we're into all the fentanyl getting mixed into everything. So it's really a roller coaster of seeing how all of that plays in. The one thing is I've gone into the mental health side of the business. What we have really seen, and we at Radiant, we are really focused on, is if you get down to talking to people with substance abuse and mental health issues, yes, there are some genetics involved, but almost always there is some form of trauma.
Yes.
And people either self-medicate for the trauma, or they abuse prescription drugs, develop an addiction to those prescription drugs. But at the base of it, if we can deal with the trauma, then a lot of times people can be a lot more successful in their recovery because they've dealt with the underlying core. They aren't just self-medicating or masking what the real issue is.
The symptoms.
Yes.
Yeah, they're dealing with what kicked it off, how it began, how deep it truly is, and everything that goes with that.
Yeah.
through our many interviews that we've had here on our Faith in Your Recovery podcast, ACEs,
Oh, yeah.
adverse childhood experiences, trauma, be it abandonment. You know, we often think of trauma, and indeed it is abuse of so many different types, and that certainly fits in. But there are those less recognized issues like abandonment or poor parenting or, you know, it branches out so many different directions.
Yeah, and I think you and I talked about it earlier years ago and when we got to know each other, but my childhood is, you know, not a prototypical childhood. My father was older when I was born. My mother was told she would never have children. Surprise, here I am.
You're real. I
Yeah,
can
you know,
see
here I
you.
am. And then when they divorced, when I was about 3 years old, my father owned a tavern, you know, and that whole lifestyle, he didn't want me in that lifestyle. So I was raised, my foster parents were good church-going people. My father really wasn't. And, you know, that's where my faith took off, you know, grew up in a church and all of that. And so, you know, looking back at my childhood, you know, we see that faith component of, yes, bad things happen to good people, but through the grace of God, you know, here we are. But, you know, we all still have, you know, my teenage years were not a lot of fun sometimes,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
And I'm no different than anybody else. You know, my story is my story, and that's one thing we try and do, and I try and remember when I'm just talking to people or talking to groups, is a lot of us are really good at hiding our trauma and how, you know, so just because I live my life a certain way or someone else lives their life a certain way, you know, and it's biblical, you know, we're not supposed to be judging people, but we don't know what they're all going through.
No way.
You know, it's, as we were joking just before we started recording, you know, a lot of the folks you see in substance abuse situations, you know, a lot of them have families with resources so they can get treatment, you know, those kinds of things. A lot of folks don't have those resources.
Exactly. And you talk about your childhood. I'll throw this in about mine. My dad was one of those who fought in World War II and went through some horrific things. He suffered from PTSD before those letters existed.
Yep.
Okay, we were not calling it PTSD when they got home from World War II.
Yeah.
That's new in that sense, but the effect was there, the pain, the struggle, his anger, his hurt, his resentment, everything that went with that. He took care of some of that with alcohol. He handled some of the rest of it properly, but he was a brute of a man, and I do not mean that totally negative, but it roughened him.
Yeah.
And indeed it would, and that's what you're saying. You know, that person across from us who isn't smiling when everybody else is, we don't know where they're mind. They may be back in that foxhole. They may be back with that sand blowing in their face, or remembering that childhood experience that just got triggered by a simple word. So how has your faith fit into your profession? How do you transfer that, and how do you use that?
Well, one of the things, I think my life experience, I've been fortunate in that it has developed a lot of empathy in how I deal with people. And I use that directly from my faith background on how Jesus dealt with people, you know. And so when we see someone who is struggling, you know, how can I help them? You know, maybe it's not much. Maybe it's just a smile and, you know, a kind word as we go by, something, you know, we never know how those impact people. But when we look at those situations and not knowing what all people are in, but as we see, you know, a lot of the offenders I used to deal with, you know, I'd have people in the office, you know, and they knew they were coming to see Greg. Okay, pretty much guess this person's got a criminal history. And, they'd all, someone would know some of the history. They'd see him around town, know what happened. And he said, how can you deal with that murderer? How can you deal with that sex offender? How can you deal with that person who did a horrible thing? It's not for me to judge.
I care.
I care,
Yeah. He needs me as much as the next good guy who's coming in here.
When I got that job, I knew the manager of the office I was based in. From that weed and seed grant, we were already doing community work together. And a few weeks in, because everyone, as soon as I got in the office, they all say, "Oh, we don't have to deal with offenders anymore. Greg's here. We can take him." I said, "No, I'm only here. I got 9 counties I got to be in. I can't be here all the time." And so the manager and I were joking about doing a training. And my sense of humor is colored by 20 years in newspapers and 10 years of hanging out with cops every night. So I have a very sarcastic sense of humor. It's one of my self-defense mechanisms. But I told this manager, I said, "I can do that training in 30 seconds. She gave me kind of a funny look. I said, "You treat the person who comes in as a person. You deal with their challenges. It's what we do with everybody. The folks I deal with probably have a few more challenges than the typical person that comes in the office." She looked at me, kind of gave me a funny look and said, "Yes, I will blow it out into a 45-minute training with a PowerPoint, but that's the premise of my training."
Let's give the folks that are listening a reminder that 30 seconds of training.
Yeah.
Go ahead, give it to them again, please.
It was just, everybody we come in, or everybody that comes in the office is a person worthy of being dealt with respect.
Amen.
And so when we deal with them with respect, and our job as employment specialists is to get to know them well enough to know their challenges. What are their employment challenges? And then help them deal with their challenges to get them successfully employed. Offenders are going to have a lot more challenges because of their offense status.
Yes.
Folks don't want to hire people with criminal records or whatever those specific crimes are, adds some of the complexity to it. So yeah, it's the premise is simple, but it's a mindset of being open and not just judging people when they walk in the door and seeing, okay, here's their paperwork. Oh yeah, okay, I see. Yeah, you've had some bad situations in your life. You're a loser.
You're talking about the mindset, and I'm thinking it's got to start with the heart set.
Yeah,
if
definitely.
you've got that heart of compassion, you're going to listen with different ears.
Yeah.
You're going to hear those words differently, and you're going to find potential instead of problems.
Yeah.
So that comes together.
Yeah, there's a concept. It's not necessarily directly related to employment, but it's a concept working with communities with in poverty or high crime, asset-based community development. Joe may only be able to do one thing. He may be able to stand at that back door of the community meeting and say hi to people. Okay, you let Joe do that.
Put him there.
Put him there, and then let him develop confidence, and so you can put him in another role. What can Joe do? What can Susie do? What are their assets? Everyone has an asset. Some people are blessed with many of them. But what can they do? And it goes to the same thing in recovery. As we help people through recovery, through this lifelong journey they're going to be on to stay in recovery, how can we support them? And that's one of my big, and I've expressed it to my legislators and everybody else, is on my personal side, I'm friends with some legislators from my newspaper background. But we've had some conversations about this and say, okay, treatment is fine. A lot of people need hardcore inpatient treatment. What are we doing with them when they get out of treatment to make sure they don't relapse? It's the mindset of, okay, you're cured. No, you're not.
We've got to change our thinking
Yes.
from destination to journey.
Definitely.
It continues to be, and you don't get there. It's not, it's an attainable goal, but it's not one you can stop at. You must continue forward, or just like riding a bike, you're going to fall.
I know of a story where a person has been to recovery 31 times.
31.
31 seems to have taken. They seem to be doing well.
How many people gave up on
Yeah.
that person at
Exactly.
5
Yeah.
or 11,
Yeah.
22?
Exactly. You know, they're older now, but whatever reason, 31, and
It took it
It
for
took.
them, but it worked.
so that is one of the mindsets that, from a faith background, Jesus never gave up on anybody, the lost sheep. He went after the one, okay. If we in this work and whatever we're doing in our life, but especially in this work, we have to keep going after that one.
I like the way you say that, because I oftentimes think, and I'll tell people when I'm filling in at a church, I'll say, I can give you a clue on when to give up on that person that's giving you the problems when Jesus does. And
Exactly.
I think we're safe on that. If we hang in there as long as he does, we're going to be okay. We're not going to be called to task on that one.
Yeah, it is.
It's not an easy thing.
No.
31, and it wasn't easy for that individual. 31 times. How many promises did they break to themselves, to their family, the bridges they burnt and everything?
Mm-hmm.
But they hung in there, and that's what it takes for all of us.
Yeah. And that's why in this field that we're in, that I'm in, and those of us who are in the recovery business, for lack of a better term, it's a lot of ups and a lot of downs.
Well, I want to go back. You were talking about your conversations with legislators and, the like. It's not Democrat. It's not Republican.
No.
What would you like to say if you could take the next moment or two and stand in front of a group of legislators and give them a paragraph? What would you like to say?
A lot of it is, and we have all kinds of data requirements. We have to show our outcomes, which is, I totally get. I'm a grant manager. I get data and send the reports to the funders and those kinds of things. But a lot of it is just that, is, okay, the reg says this person gets X amount of treatment. Okay, this person's had X amount of treatment. They've made progress, but they aren't where they need to be or where they want to be or where we think they can get. How can we have some flexibility in the system to account for some of that, with whatever. And then again, that whole wraparound kind of support thing, and we are getting a lot better at it. I know years ago it was, people left left treatment. You're on your own. Good luck. Hope I don't see you again. But we are getting a lot better with, in our world, the parlance is case management, case coordination. We have staff who help people navigate the system.
Yes.
And we all know, the system has a lot of issues, but it's the system we have to play with. So let's learn how to navigate the system and help people we support navigate that system, get them what they need to live a better life. And that's complicated. I know from personal experience, I've had friends who have struggled with either addictions or mental health issues, and they're calling me for advice, and I'm telling them, okay, well, you call this person, you do this, and you do this, and and it's like, well, wait a minute, I know the system, and I'm struggling in it, and it's how do we expect someone who just got out of prison or just got out of rehab or is in full-blown active substance abuse issues to navigate the system to get the help they need?
Yes.
And I know, not to do too much of a commercial for Radiant, but I know that is one of our focuses at the organization right now is how do we create that support system to help the people we support, because we are the community mental health center. We are the safety net provider. More than 80%, I think it's 84, 85% of our people we serve are on some kind of state benefits. That's the people. We are the safety net. That's who we predominantly serve. So those folks we serve need a lot of that support to help navigate the system to be successful. So that's kind of my big thing. It was a little longer than 30 seconds, but
no problem.
That's how we look at it. How do we look at things holistically? A lot of the services And a lot of people are doing a lot of good work, but especially 20, 30 years ago, we all did it in silos.
Yes.
You needed food, you
We're
went here, you
doing
need
better
clothing.
than we've ever
Yes,
done, but
we
we're
are.
not there yet, are
Yes.
we? And I like the way you started that off, the idea of the need for the data. I get that.
Yeah.
But it makes me think of someone going into the hospital and insurance telling you you'll suddenly be healed, ready to get out of the hospital in 3.5 days.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And we're not all the same at
Yeah.
anything.
It is.
It's
Yeah.
not going to work that way.
Yeah, I
So-
get the idea of standardization and efficiencies and all that, but we're not making widgets here.
No,
We're dealing with human beings who are all different and all have different needs. So,
absolutely. Absolutely. What's been some of the joys of your work over the years? What are some of those moments, experiences that have reminded you why you do what you do?
just seeing people be successful. I know back from my newspaper days, knowing a lot of the police officers, and there was a situation where a teenager ran away from a children's home and was killed in a tragic traffic accident on the interstate. Well, someone called me and said, "Hey, you need to dig into this a little bit. This one ain't right." And so I dug into it, called, got a hold of family, talked to the judge, and it wound up, it's ironic that was 30 years ago, probably. But I'm seeing that in the world I'm in now, because this teenager that got killed was not an incorrigible juvenile. She had a mental health issue, a diagnosed mental health issue. 30 years ago, the system didn't know what to do with her, so they put her in a children's home with other incorrigible juveniles. She just wanted to go home. Her parents, when I talked to them and did the two stories, they were convinced, because she was on the northbound lane of 69, and she lived north, Delaware County. They were convinced she was just trying to get home. The judge said when he sentenced her, he had no other choice, but he said, on the record, I have the quote in the article, said she did not need a home. She needed mental health assistance. So fast forward 30 years, and I'm in the mental health business now. But just seeing stories like that, where some are tragic, but out of the articles we wrote, we created a lot of awareness for mental health issues. You know, I think she was 15 or 16 at the time. Details are kind of fuzzy 30 years later. But, yeah, it's just, she had a lifelong mental health struggle from as a toddler, basically. They knew there were issues. But spin that today to where the folks we deal with, most of the jails in Indiana right now are not filled with criminals, anywhere between, depending on the jail and how they're set up, I would venture to say 40 to 60% of the people, if not more, are in there because they have mental health issues.
No doubt.
Maybe they've committed a crime worthy of being incarcerated, but the underlying issue
as a result of that,
as a result of a mental health issue, or a mental health issue driving a substance abuse issue. So yeah, but seeing people succeed. There was one, in my newspaper days, there was one guy I wrote about quite often, was a drug dealer in Muncie. His whole family was involved in the business. And 30 years later, he is clean, been sober for years. I work with him on a regular basis. Very successful, helping other people stay clean. And when I went to Marion almost 11 years ago now, ran into him, and kind of introduced him, like, "You remember me?" He says, "Yeah, I remember the name." And, we've been friendly ever since,
Yeah.
But he is totally straightened up, got out of Delaware County, went to a different county, and is actively engaged as one of the beacons in that community of someone who can get out of the business and straighten their life up.
That's what we're about,
Exactly.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Totally.
That's what Christ was about for us, what we need to be about for others.
Yeah.
You work in this genre, that category, I work in another or similar. It doesn't matter. We've all got a role to play.
Exactly.
And play it the best you can.
Yep.
Until it becomes a lifestyle, and then live it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, over those years, couple of disappointments. You just told us some of the joys. Give us a couple of disappointments. I thought we were getting this. I thought we were there.
I mean, there were, part of it was, and I think having been in journalism for 20 years, there's a part of me that still thinks I'm an old journalist. I still think like one, I still write a lot, those kinds of things. But seeing how that business has changed, and all my friends who have all left the business too, and we all say the same thing, is we still love the business, but the business we love doesn't exist anymore. The media business has changed dramatically. I left in 99, so I've been out of the business more than I was in it. So I'll let the listeners train them for how old I am. But yeah, it's those kinds of things where, to be a good journalist, you have to be invested. And, we were all, there were 5 of us that all had 20 years in the business that all left within a year of each other for mostly the same reason. But we all took different paths. We've all somewhat stayed in touch. But to see that, so that's one of my disappointments is, seeing the way the media business is going. But that's a whole other topic that's way away from this.
No, maybe.
But yeah, just seeing some of that. So, career changes. And then there are some where, as I tell people, I used to have a lot of interns, and still occasionally have interns for, college interns, and come in. And we talk about, what this business is going to be, and, especially when I was in newspapers, and now I'm in more of a public service community role. You talk about there's a fine edge between being invested and holding on too tightly. One of the pet phrases I would always use, and most people I worked with would use it when I was doing employment full-time, was, I will only work for you as hard as you work for yourself.
Boundaries.
Yeah. But you would have, occasionally, you'd have that one person who would come in and do, everything I asked of them, and do the resume and practice their job skills, and, we'd help them get a job. And then I'd, get a call from the employer. I'd touch base with them every couple of weeks and see how they were doing. And then you get a call from the employer like, hey, had to let Johnny go. It's like, darn it. So you call Johnny back, try and get him in, and we start over, But it's like, but that's kind of human nature kind of stuff.
I was going to say, that doesn't just come with mental
Oh, no.
health issues or addiction.
Yeah.
That's who we are.
That's who we are.
Isn't
Yeah,
it?
totally.
We can't always be as counted upon as we would like to be, or think we are.
Yeah, and we've all disappointed people in our lives. I dare anyone to say they haven't. So yeah, there are people we're close to, and people that have faded away, and for various reasons, and those kinds of things. But as we try and live authentically as best we can, then what does that mean for us, not only in our faith, but in our profession and in our other relationships, the things we volunteer for? How does that whole package work together? And then if you throw somebody with mental health issues or a substance abuse issue, and we always encourage something to do to get them involved, so they're not just sitting at home pondering life and then calling their dealer and, being bored. And, so one of the things where employment comes in so well is it gets them something to do and a paycheck. And,
Sure.
There are a lot of residual effects just besides the money. But how do we blend all that to where we have an impact? And some folks don't think that way. It's just the way I'm wired. But as we look at, I'm firmly convinced that all of us have impact on others.
One way or the other, positive or negative.
Good or bad, yes. So how do we make that as good as possible and how do we minimize the bad, and then how do we navigate that authentically in our own lives?
Yes. Let's say somebody's out there listening and they're having their own mental health struggles and they know they're dealing with mental health issues. Give them some advice, some hope, direction.
Bottom line, call 988. I mean, Indiana has established the 988. It is the mental health 911 number. So if you have no connections with a local mental health system or not already a client with one, call 988. There will be somebody to answer the call. The state has gone to a new model, and we are up to our eyeballs in it with them. They call it the 3 pillars model. Someone to call, which is the 988 system. Someone to respond. If you are truly in crisis, you call 988. There will be a mobile crisis response team come to wherever you are and talk to you. They will help you determine, do you need, then that 3rd pillar is someplace to go, which is a mobile, what we call a crisis stabilization unit, where there are trained people there. You can stay there, again, regulations, but you can stay there 23 and a half hours. That's a Medicaid rule that we can't keep anyone longer than that without having formal paperwork done. But
so that's within range of anyone. You know, it doesn't matter where you're from here in this state.
Anywhere in Indiana. Well,
okay.
Nationally, anyone nationally can call 988, and they will get plugged in.
So somebody will respond, a trauma team of a sort, and then following that, they'll find you a safe place for 23 and a half hours, which gives you the time.
There will be an evaluation, and by the end of that 23, some people don't stay that long.
Sure.
But by the time you leave that crisis center, you will have a roadmap to what your future treatment can look like. You either leave with appointments. Some people will get referred to another facility. Some people are in crisis enough they need inpatient care, for days or inpatient treatment if it's a full-blown addiction. But you will leave with plans for how you can get better.
So those 3 pillars, as you called them, is there any charge? If I make a call, are you going to charge me for those 23? I shouldn't say you, but the powers that be.
We take anyone. We're worried about the person. We'll figure out the finances later.
Okay.
That is...
that's important.
988 is a free call.
There's no reason not to call if
right.
you know you're in trouble.
Yeah.
If you're
and many
concerned.
988 calls are just solved on the call.
Can I call for you if I see that in you, see yourself as a danger to yourself?
That gets a little tricky because of HIPAA and some of those kinds of things. Ideally, it's the person in the situation needs somebody to talk to.
Okay.
But, call 988. That's a national number. The state is still working on some of the connections on connecting the 988 system statewide. So it may not be like, hold on, I'll transfer you. It may be, hang on, I need to make a phone call. So there's some technology pieces on the back end, but the system is up and running. So anyone in Indiana calls 988 will talk to somebody.
Okay.
So we're working on expanding it and some of those kinds of things. There were 15 organizations awarded money a year ago for mobile crisis response. Radiant, where I work in Hartford City and Marion, our team will respond within 45 miles of Marion. That's in the regs for accepting the money and standing up the team. And our crisis unit will serve anyone within that 45 miles. So those circles somewhat overlap. There are still some areas the state's working on, but we are the early adopters of that, and that's where the state's moving in coming years. So mental health is getting a huge boost in Indiana.
Folks, of all of this you've heard, I've got 3 numbers for you. 988. If you're in any kind of mental health crisis, call. You have nothing to lose by calling and your life to lose by not calling.
Exactly.
And we want to give you that opportunity to take that next step in recovery. As we wrap this up, Greg, is there anything else you'd like to throw out here that you feel the need to share or say?
Yeah, that was the big thing, was just the way Indiana is progressing on crisis services. So 988 is so important. I know
That's
if you've
big.
been watching TV, the state is promoting 988. Some of the mobile crisis stuff is, they're pushing people to 988 deservedly so, because that is the hub for getting people help to start with.
I like the way you referred to it as the 911
Yeah.
of mental health
It is.
crisis or need.
Yeah.
So
Part of the goal is to take some of the burden off law enforcement. So, a lot of our mobile crisis team does respond a lot, because a lot of people call 911 for whatever situation is. And then either the dispatcher or the officers on the scene will call us and say, hey, we
there's
need
so
your
much
help.
more training for law enforcement than there used to be, but they can't be an answer to everything.
Yeah. One thing we are pushing in our area, and it's an international program. It's a program called Mental Health First Aid. And it's a one-day training, and we are going to we're ramping it up. We've got a couple instructors at Radiant, and we're trying to add a couple of more. But we are looking at working a lot with first responders to teach them some of the signs of mental illness or addiction, so that they then know who to call.
I was just privileged to go share with our county sheriff's department during a training dealing with addiction and mental health, and it brought in from several different counties, 30 or 40
So
there.
that CIT training they just did a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Yes.
We had some folks there too. Yeah.
Okay. So, Well, listen, number one, Greg, it was good to
great to catch up.
reconnect.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
And reflect back on that, but to see where you've been, what you've done, what you're doing, and where you're going. Thank you for that effort.
Yeah,
Thank you for
appreciate it.
that work. Thanks for caring.
Yes.
And we just, we believe that together we'll make an impact.
Mhm.
You do your part, I'll try mine, and we hope to see a difference in those who have the greatest needs.
One life at a time.
Amen to that. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. We invite you to stay in the battle. And I want to remind you one more time of that mental health care number, that 911 of mental health care. 988 is the number to call, and action will happen in a hurry. God bless. Take care. Stay in the battle. Amen.